Snap.
Welcome to Born to be Cosmo, a semi-regular, irregular podcast about Marvel Snap, where we talk about the game that is obsessing our lives, capturing our attention, we thought this was going to be a one-off, then it became a two-off, and here we are for episode 3. So the idea is we're going to do this semi-regularly when we feel like it. No schedule. Maybe once a month, maybe twice a month. We're going to put our feelers out and see. We've been enjoying talking about the game, and we're going to continue to do so as long as it captures us. That said, if you're tuning in live for Born to be Wild, they will be live on their regularly scheduled time on Friday evenings. So don't fret. This is not meant to replace Born to be Wild, merely to supplement it. For those that both enjoy Marvel Snap and Hearthstone. And as always, by trend of 2 other episodes, I am joined by my co-host and good friend, Nate Wolfe. Nate, how are you today on,
Hey.
What is it, 20 minutes sleep?
Yeah, I got about an hour. I sacrificed some sleep last night to do some podcast background artwork. For those of you watching the video version of this, you'll see it. If you're listening to the audio version, you won't. But since we decided to make it a little more regular, thought we'd spruce things up a little bit. So had some fun with it, and next thing I looked over and it was like 5 in the morning, and then it was 6 in the morning, and I was like, oh snap, I gotta get ready for work at 7. So I slept for an hour. It was a mistake, but it's okay. It's okay. I'm here. I'm happy to be here, hanging out with some good friends, talking about this game that I like, and we got some fun news tonight. A little bit more structure tonight, so I'm really excited to jam through things. Real quick, talking about my week. Things have been a little bit crazy. I didn't rank up as high as I wanted to last month. I think I ended the month around rank 50 or so. But I did finish the whole rewards track, and then some, which was great. I paid the $10, so I didn't get the boost, but I still finished the whole thing with plenty of time to spare. So that was good. I only unlocked a handful of cards, but the best of them probably was leader. I just got leader, and then they announced the nerf like the next day, of course. But I'm happy that I got them. Cool thing of the week. Usually I hate opening up avatars in the collector's cache, but I got the Cosmo avatar, so it was like, okay. So I had to rock it because this is Born to be Cosmo.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing that I wanted to say, and then I'll pass the mic over to Zombies. I wanted to say a big thank you to both of you for your advice last week, because I had extra gold and I used it to purchase additional missions, and it helped me so much to unlock additional cards. I probably made 5 or 6 different cards infinite this week. It was awesome. I did so many missions, and because my rank at the end of the month was low, I started low, but I jammed up to rank 40, and I think I've blinged out 5 or 6 cards, and so your advice in spending the gold for additional missions was clutch. So I really appreciate that. Anyways, yeah, that's me, but I'm really excited to be here.
Just a note, we were supposed to be joined by 2 of our good friends tonight, ZombiesGoNomNom and Binks. Binks had to unfortunately cancel at the very last moment due to a family emergency. So we're going to miss him tonight. We wish him well. We hope everything's okay. And I'm sure we'll get him on a future episode again. So for those that were tuning in, apologies. But sometimes, things can't be helped in life. So we wish Binks all the best.
Absolutely.
But not to say that you're a consolation prize, Zombies. But we've got Zombies. No, I'm kidding.
Next best thing.
Next best thing. Happy to have you here. Both you and Binks are my very favorite Marvel Snap content creators. I think that you guys are putting out amazing content, and when we come to talk about Snap, it's just my go-to because your content is how I interact with the game. So that said, it's been a big week. How's your week been going through this period of transition, Marvel Snap?
Pretty good. There are definitely some challenges for sure that I'm thinking about with obviously, me moving from mercenaries to Snap, I mentioned a little bit last time, has been generally a really positive transition. However, one thing that's obviously different from the game I played before and the game I play now, there are a lot more people making content for this game.
Mm,
So, in order to, I think, kind of set yourself apart from the pack, I have some ideas to venture into some content about the game that's not directly gameplay focused. I think, there are a lot of people doing gameplay right now. I enjoy doing it. I'm not going to stop doing it, but I think I want to throw something else into the mix. So hopefully sometime later this month, there'll be some cool Snap projects if I can figure out the time and the will to edit something cool together. Because I have a lot of ideas. I just need to kind of transition those ideas into reality. But other than that, just kind of enjoying the new card stuff. I'm excited to talk about kind of initial impressions of the new pass card. We got all the cards revealed for this month that are dropping into the game. We got some patch stuff. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. So I'm excited to hear kind of everyone's thoughts on all the information.
yeah, and for myself, I'm still continuing to play Snap every day. Reset kind of stung. I didn't quite hit rank 90. I topped off at 89 before I kind of precipitously fell down to 86.
Oh,
I haven't
close.
I haven't been playing that well, so it was 100% on me. Had I played correctly, I would have hit 90 for sure. Month start's been interesting, been experimenting kind of with the new cards. Pulled a Shuri, which was kind of nuts, out of a
I'm
collector's cache.
so jealous. That's awesome.
And
Congratulations.
Sure,
I haven't been
gang.
using it. So like after going through all the new stuff, I'm back to playing like good old like classic Apocalypse cow dog discard, and I'm just crushing it. Just right before the pod started, hit rank 60 and got my variant Pixel Bucky Barnes. So for those that accuse me of being a Pixel apologist, yeah, I'm not too happy with Pixel Bucky Barnes. So
Yeah.
there you go. Yeah, so lots has been happening, and I think that where we're gonna start is with the topic that I think is on everyone's mind, the patch.
Yeah.
Nate, tell us a little bit about the patch and kind of the drama associated with it.
Oh my gosh. Well, that was one of the reasons we talked about recording. It was like we were going to push it off, and it was like, well, we just got a new card and there's a patch out of nowhere. And then the drama, of course, is the patch got delayed. So Ben Brode on Twitter, I'm just going to read these tweets here. So initially on January 3rd, Ben says, new patch coming tomorrow with some balance changes and other cool stuff. This is not the patch that includes battle mode. That patch will drop towards the end of the season. And then later that day says, we discovered a last minute issue with the patch we were planning to release tomorrow. It will be delayed and I will let you know more details soon. Shouldn't be longer than a week of delay though. And then LOL, I should have known announcing a patch day would jinx it. And so yeah, there's well, some changes in the pipeline, I should say. Um, a little bit sad that they got delayed. Uh, and so I guess the next logical question, right, is, well, what's in the patch notes? Because they got delayed. Well, turns out we had a leak from Snap Korea. And so
So
we
just to be
have
clear,
some balance changes to talk about.
does it really qualify as a leak when your own organization leaks it? Because it was their Korean site that did it. So I mean, a
You
leak?
know,
Yes and no. It's like gray area, right?
Fair
I
enough.
think when Ben Brode was still at Blizzard, the same thing happened with Doctor Boom, Mad Genius, released early on accident.
Oh, really?
Um, it's so funny. Anyways, it's maybe it's a half a leak, but we got a sneak peek into what the balance changes are going to be. And so there are a handful of cards that are getting hit. So here are the nerfs. Arrow. Galactus, Leader, and Nova are getting nerfed. And then there are buffs as well. So buffs to Drax, Groot, Hazmat, Black Cat, and Nakia. And then again, the next logical question is, well, what do you mean nerfs? What do you mean buffs? What are they going to be? I think a lot of us, at least myself, think in terms of Hearthstone, like, oh God, what's happening? And they made it very simple for us. So all of the nerfs, all of these cards are getting -1 power. All of the buffs are getting +1 power. It's very simple and straightforward. So Arrow, Galactus, Leader, and Nova are all going down 1 power. Drax, Groot, Hazmat, Black Cat, and Nakia going up 1 power.
So pretty light touch in both directions. So curious.
One thing. So there is a little bit more with the Drax and the Groot. So they're going up in power, but their effect is being changed. So it's only gaining 3 instead of 4. So the total power is the same. It's just not as bad as if you whiff, basically. Is the idea.
All right. Thank you for clarifying that. I thought it was just getting okay. So those are really light buffs then, because the total potential is basically has the same ceiling. Interesting.
Yeah, it's just less of a feels bad, right? Like the card is less bad if you miss. That's the idea.
Okay.
It seems.
So I think that these are very light touches, and while I think that people weren't necessarily clamoring for buffs, they definitely were clamoring for nerfs. So, before we kind of go to the zeitgeist and share some of the feedback that's been circulating, I'm really curious about your collective feedbacks on this, because I think what's interesting is while there's a lot of vocal feedback, and we'll get to that in a second, not sure that everyone has the same kind of takeaways from this. So, I'm curious, like from your perspective, Nate, what was your reaction to these changes?
Well, I honestly, I like them. I think that their approach is like not too much, not too little. But I like it, and it's not just because I opened Leader the day the nerf got announced. But here's my thought, right? Again, we all come from this Hearthstone background where we've seen these cards get nerfed to oblivion. We all joke about Warsong Commander, right? The card, or basically the idea is the card nerfed to the point that it's unplayable, and they didn't do that here. And my thought on why, or at least some thought behind it is, in a game like Hearthstone, when a card gets nerfed, you're eligible for a full dust refund. Meaning, if you crafted the card, you get your arcane dust back. You craft a new card, whatever. But the way that their progression system works in Snap, there's not that option, right? So if I unpack a card from the collector's cache or whatever it is, like I got the card. If the card gets nerfed or buffed or changes, like I don't get anything. And so it is what it is, right? But I think when you kick that up a notch, now that they have the pin system with the rotating shop, like, dude, if I just spent 6,000 tokens on Galactus and then my Galactus gets nerfed, like, you think you get your 6,000 tokens back? Nope.
Do you
The
think
collector
that,
provides no refunds.
do you think that so? Do you think the investment that people have to make into their cards, both in acquiring them and leveling them up, factors into the light touch of the nerf at all?
I think so. I mean, it would be sad if you spent all this time and energy, beefing up your card in terms of progression and going infinite with it, or spending all of your tokens on buying a card for it to be completely unplayable. That it would just be, especially with their no refund policy, like you would just be SOL, and that's it. It's like super feels bad, and so, and honestly, what's the point of having a card in the game that sees 0 play? I mean, there's gonna be some cards that are like stinkers. There definitely
I don't want
are.
to talk about Helicarrier again, but but yeah.
Well,
I hear ya.
Helicarrier should have got buffed. That one was a
Yeah,
miss,
why did
but
that get buffed?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that is influencing their decision.
there would have been like a massive outcry on Reddit or wherever. Like, can you
Wow.
just imagine? Like,
Like there isn't already.
Yeah.
well, I shouldn't have said the R word, but you know what I mean, right? Serious question. If you paid 6,000 tokens for any card, right, and it took either you spent a whole grip of cash to get them, or you saved them up for a long, long time, and then the card that you just got is now unplayable, like you would be very unhappy, right?
For sure.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
that's my thought on
100%.
why the light touch, and I'm okay with that. I don't think the card needs to be playable; it just needs to be balanced. And
Yeah.
so I think the light touch approach is good. And the beauty of digital card games is if it needs another adjustment, they can do that. It's not like a physical game where they're going to print new ones, and then
Mhm.
if it doesn't work, then we see those problems in Magic, but not here. So I'm okay with it. I think that it's okay.
I'm curious on your thoughts, zombies. I'm sure you have a lot to say.
Um, Yeah, it's so the funny thing about Galactus is like, people meme and some people do it unironically and actually mean it when they say, well, if you're lowering this card's power, he gets better in Mr. Negative. I don't think Mr. Negative is going to be running Galactus anytime soon, but it is kind of funny because this is actually kind of a buff to Galactus, in my opinion. Galactus, oftentimes, you do not want to have priority going into that final turn. Because if you do, then people can Shang-Chi your stuff. And you're usually playing a death or a null or some big stuff, right? Or a leader or what have you. But a lot of times it's big stuff. So the fact that you actually have a greater chance to not have priority on the final turn, I think actually makes the card better, not worse.
Wow.
It's kind of a weird situation where there's not really a number they can tweak on this card to really, I think, make an impact. Like I just don't think tweaking you can't really tweak the cost of the card because what are you gonna make it cost more than 6? Like people would still cheat it out with wave, wouldn't do anything. It would also just make it really unintuitive. And then you can't really like changing the power doesn't really do anything because we're not playing him for 3 power. We're playing him for the effect,
Are we
right?
playing any of these cards for the power? Like, let's be real here for a second. Like looking at Arrow, Galactus, Leader, and Nova. None of those cards are played because they're big chonkers. They're
Well,
they're they're played for their on reveal effects. And
yeah, but I think the power. So a great example of this is Arrow in beta, right? Like we talk about how good Arrow is right now, and they mentioned she's really good, so we bumped her power down a little bit. But Arrow got essentially the Destroyer treatment. Arrow was a 6 power in beta. Nobody played that card. It got buffed shortly before launch, I believe, to 8. People found out, hey, this card's pretty good at 8, and started playing it a bunch. Same thing kind of happened to Destroyer. Destroyer was at 14, got buffed to 16. They found kind of a happy middle ground at 15. And that's what's happening to Arrow here. And I don't think Arrow's going to see pretty much any less play because, like Blue mentioned, you're playing her more for the effect than the stats. But I think in all the cards you mentioned, the stats matter significantly more than they do for Galactus. Because Galactus, the vast majority of your power plays are coming, the turn after Galactus, and it's actively beneficial to not have priority more so than having it, right?
I
And
didn't
leader
think of
plays
that.
into that too,
Yeah.
because if your opponent plays buffs, you get the buffs, and then you get if they have it on reveal, which is silly in my
And, and
opinion.
and that was the thing that really, so we all have had these experiences where they just slammed leader and like it was just a complete blowout, right? And that tilts people, and there are times when I'm not thrilled about it, but the one time where I kind of slammed my fists on the table and screamed expletive leader was when I revealed first. My
Hmm.
threes got revealed. They got buffed
Hmm.
by Surfer. Then they were revealed on my opponent's side with my Surfer buff, and then got rebuffed again with their Surfer.
Hmm.
Basically, not only copying my cards, but getting them twice the buff. And
Yeah.
and I'll be honest with you, I didn't really say this, although I thought to myself, what could they do to meaningfully change leader? I thought it was going to be that, maybe amongst other things. Taking the
Hmm.
power down one, will it matter in some certain situations? I think all of these power adjustments may matter, although in the case of Galactus, I think it's hilarious the buff piece, so
Hmm.
maybe a bit of a whoopsie there. But like, people are still going to play Nova if it's a 1/1. People are still going
Yeah.
to play Leader if it's a 6/3. And I think that they're in a tough spot because while these are pool 3 cards with the exception of Galactus, To Nate's point, there's a precedent being set here, and I'm about to drop 6,000 tokens on a pool 5 card, and yeah, it would suck if it got nerfed. I would feel, I would be angry. So
Yeah.
so so how do you balance all that? And I think they're in a pretty tough spot.
It's tricky, right? Like, how do you, I mean, they've been very clear about like the no refund stuff, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad direction to take because I do think when you do provide, like Hearthstone does with the dust system, I think I think multiple. I know Ixar said some stuff. I don't know if any of the other game directors did, but I think at least him, if not more, said in retrospect down the line, we kind of wish we did something different than the dust system because we don't like encouraging people to destroy their cards.
Right.
But it's just been a precedent for so long that if they tried to do something different, people would absolutely
Be
lose
riots
their
in the
minds.
streets.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like it's
so
just it's too far gone, right? So I think if this approach allows them to be a little more free form with how often and which cards they choose to balance, I think that's a good thing. I'm honestly really surprised we got the Galactus change, and I was really surprised by what they said about it, in that it's like cube rate was really dominant.
I can see it because like the problem is that like it kind of happens and like a good Galactus player, they'll snap and then they'll slam Galactus and then you have to retreat and they take 2 of your cubes, and I think that happens very consistently. So if you're constantly like if you look at like average cube rates, they tend to like not be like like 1 average cube per game is high, right? So if it's kind of pushing those boundaries, it's probably one of those like statistically like it's probably deviates from what they want power levels to be, but because of the whole like win rate versus cube system versus how it feels, it kind of is a bit of an oddity, right? Like you have a tier system, do you base the deck tier on its win rate or its cube acquisition? Because as we've personally experienced, we have decks where we've had better climbs with far worse win rates. So it's kind of a weird dynamic. You've kind of got like 2 data points you have to measure.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
2 different games you're learning, kind of. You're learning the game of how to play actual Marvel Snap, but you're also learning the game of when to snap, when to retreat, and they go hand in hand. You can massively succeed at a high win rate with your deck, but if you're gaining 1 cube every time and you're losing 2, 4, or 8, you're not going to have a great experience climbing. And I think that's
Yeah.
something that is challenging for people, especially like us who, you're coming from other card games where there's not really another, TCG or CCG like that, where I'm learning, a game within a game in terms of like the snapping system. And so I think that definitely takes some adjustment, and I think it's also incredibly hard to master. It's one of those things where I think it has a very deep depth to it at especially at a higher level, and it requires a lot of thinking, right? Because like if you know generally the decks, if you know the cards people can have or typically run, you can kind of calculate your outs and your opponent's outs a lot of the time. Um, but like at the same time, you're not going to do that every game you're playing. Like if I'm streaming for 3+ hours. After hour 2 or something, I'm not doing all those calculations.
Yeah.
Like
So
it's hard.
yeah, interestingly enough, you will all be shocked to hear that the internet had lots to say on the subject.
Of course
And
it did.
Ben, so I actually thought this was kind of cool. Most of the time with Hearthstone, the folks tend to not publicly acknowledge the leaks. That's been their policy. Ben Brode acknowledged the leaks and addressed them. So Nate, if you want to go ahead and read those 3 tweets that he posted about his thoughts on the leaks, I thought it was an interesting statement that was made.
Yeah, all right, so here's the Ben Brode tweets. There's some discussion about a card nerf leak where leader gets a 1 power reduction. There might be some context missing that I wanted to clear up. Here's the note that was intended to accompany that change. Leader's effect is proving to be very frustrating to many players and polarizing in its ability to lock down games and discourage playing some other 6-cost cards. We're taking a bit of power away from him for now and exploring further changes to the card in the future. And then a follow-up tweet where he says, that last sentence is not intended to mean, quote, we may or may not change him again. It's intended to mean we are determining exactly which change to make. Okay. So that's interesting.
Maybe there's still hope for my desire to not have it copy the buff cards. Or
Yeah,
maybe they'll even take
I
it a
like
step
that idea.
further where those cards won't get the on reveal effects. Maybe that would really kind of take its power down a little bit, right?
Oh, he'd be buried out back if that happened.
Yeah. So
Well,
I mean, who knows what they're gonna do?
yeah. And can I interject super quick? I'm still, I mean, I think one of the things that we've talked about with this game is that while some things are very, I don't know, you figure them out as you go along. Some things are not so clear. And so two questions that I had come up this week, and I had friends explain them to me. Blutrane being one and Zombies the other. But number one, it's just super quick because I don't want to derail the show. But how does priority work? Because like I know that whoever's like name is blinking gets to gets priority, but like how is that determined?
So,
Zombies.
basically, the game doesn't really do a good job of explaining this. I really wish they did it in the tutorial because, as you guys have probably both experienced, it kind of matters quite a bit, especially towards the end of the game, but even in early games sometimes with like trying to tech people out with certain tech cards. It really matters like, hey, am I revealing my cards first or is my opponent revealing their cards first? Especially because whoever doesn't reveal first, their cards aren't really seen there for the most part. There are a few exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, when their card is face down, it's like it's not there in the vast majority of cases. And so it matters, who's getting priority, who's revealing first, who's revealing second. What determines it is whoever is winning the most lanes at the start of that turn. Now, what if you're tied on lanes? Then it goes by whoever is winning the other lane by more. So if we're tied in the middle and I'm winning the right by 5 and someone else is winning the left by 3, I'm going to have priority because I'm winning through the tie. So that's
Yeah, see,
generally how it's done.
they don't explain any of that to you.
No, they don't.
So
it might be in a tip or something, but they don't explain it very well.
I appreciate the quick explanation. The other question that I had, and I believe Blutrane answered it earlier this week, but if Blue can clarify, was so I finally opened Leader, right? And I'm like, how does this work? Because the text on the card and what it actually does sometimes are different, and the priority also works into that based on reveal effects, right? So Blue, can you maybe just give me the Cliff Notes version of how this card actually works? Because I think I'm playing it wrong.
Right. So what it does is when you play it, what it will do is before any cards flip, it will copy the cards that your opponent played in the exact same lane as your opponent. So for example, if you play leader in an open lane and your opponent plays 2 cards, you will get those 2 cards placed in the same order as your opponent. Now, if you have
assuming
a lane,
I have space, right?
So
yes.
if your lane has 2 slots free and your opponent plays 3 cards, then you will only get one of them. And it will be based on the order that your opponent played them. So your opponent will have played, let's say, Scorpion first and then Magneto second. It'll copy Scorpion. So that's something to keep in mind when you think you're playing against leader. Now, as for the flip, that is based on priority. And so if the opponent is winning, either through controlling 2 lanes or 3, or winning the overall total power of the tie, then he'll flip first. And this is what we were talking about before, and the part that frankly really upsets me is that if the cards get buffed because one of the revealed cards was Silver Surfer or something else like that.
Any buff, yeah.
Any buff. Like when I flip my 3 cost card over, let's say it was Maximus, right? It'll be 10 power instead of 7. And then if I also get the Surfer, it'll buff it to 13. So I don't know if that kind of explains it a little bit, but that is in a nutshell how it works. It's probably one of the most complex cards mechanically, which makes it difficult to play around, which is probably why it's such a noob stomper.
Well, there's one other reason it's really difficult to play around, I find generally, and it's that leader often, in order to play around leader, makes it so you're playing suboptimally against the vast majority of other things that are going to try and end the game. Whether that's another big six, whether it's a Silver Surfer type thing. At least in my experience, a lot of the times, it's not that you can't play around him. You can. It's possible. It can work, but it requires, one, you kind of have to build your deck in a way to enable that a bit. Like Mysterio is the number one leader hater because leader just copies a fake Mysterio. They don't actually get a real one. Um, so that's kind of like a neat interaction, but obviously there's not a whole ton of Mysterio. And I think Blue is kind of right on the money where I think one of the biggest frustrations with this card is not that it's just copying your stuff, which on its own can open up kind of a psychological issue of frustration, regardless of if the card is too powerful or not too powerful. It's going to annoy people. But that point right there of it buffs up. So I build my deck around Silver Surfer. I'm putting all these threes in my deck. My opponent has done nothing to build their deck around this card. And not only do they get my cards, do they get the buff I get, but they get an extra buff. And a lot of the time with these leader decks, they are behind on the final turn, but they're only behind enough where leader can push them ahead with that extra, 4 power. And that's what gets incredibly frustrating because, and also, unlike other tech cards like Shang-Chi or Leech, a very popular one right now, you can't just get leadered and retreat. It's the final turn. So when you're getting leadered, you don't have a chance to. You have to decide. Well, I can't beat leader. I guess I concede. They might not even have it, but it's still the correct move to concede a lot of the time if you can't beat it, and that feels really, really bad.
It's like the Galactus effect, but even worse.
But it's so free, right?
Yeah.
Like at least Galactus has these restrictions, whereas Leader, he just goes into so many decks. And I played Leader a lot, not in the beta, but maybe a little bit in the beta. I think he was one of my early pool threes. I played with Leader quite a bit, and people were always a little annoyed by the card, but it had never gotten to the point it is right now. And I think that's because the game kind of changed a bit, where boards I think got a little bit less full, so leader got a bit more value because people were playing more expensive stuff rather than cheap stuff, whether that be 3 drops, 4 drops, 5, 6, whatever, rather than 1s and 2s. I think that played a role into it, and I think all these new cards we got in pool 4 and pool 5 kind of pushed a direction of a little bit more mid to late game strategy, so leader really was able to kind of excel versus all these kind of new decks that are trying to do dominant things at like the end of the game.
So to summarize, leader bad, internet unhappy. But
Yeah.
If that wasn't enough, it's almost like the patch got delayed, but so we didn't get the good, but we got the bad because we saw what was in it. So there was more in the patch outside these balance changes, and kind of wanting to pivot to that. Super tiny text. But Nate, since I'm hard of seeing, maybe you can go through the 4 additional items in the patch.
Yeah. Okay. So the good one, right? Artist credits for variants are being added, so that's good. We like that. I think
we do.
I'm happy about that one.
People have been asking for that for a while.
Yeah, well, it'd be nice to know too, because and it's super weird when you get a variant in the shop. Sometimes it just says variant, and sometimes it says like Alex Ross variant.
Yeah.
Right, like anyways, but they're adding the artists to the variant, which is cool. Happy about that. A new card, I shouldn't say new. Orca is being added to Series 4.
Another bad Series 4 card. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. I think it was bugged before and they got it fixed. It was supposed to release with the other ones, but it didn't.
Yeah, I have not played it. But maybe one day. I don't know. But it's bad, yeah. I don't really know what it does.
It's
not hella
just kind of like
bad,
it's like a bigger Atuma. Kind of. Or not Atuma. It's like a bigger Namor. It's just a 6 cost and it gets a bonus if it's alone, basically.
Oh, man. All right.
It's kind of boring.
A couple other things in the patch notes. The next is there is a pro bundle coming. So it includes 12,500 credits plus boosters to upgrade 8 common cards to infinity. My only thought on that is like, good Lord, how much is that going to cost? It's going to cost like $100.
I hope
Maybe
not.
I'm on some serious cope here, but they kind of said this is a bundle to help kind of give beginners a shot in the arm, right? So when they say 6 common cards, I think what they mean are 6 pool 1 cards, right? This is the kind of thing that you can get, at any point when you're playing, and hopefully because it's 6 pool 1 cards and it's only credits, maybe it'll be for a more reasonable price than we're suspecting. We've got predictions in chat of $100 or 8,000 gold. I'd like it to be a third of that. That's what I'd like to see the price point be.
Yeah,
now,
I
if you'll
mean,
excuse me, I'm going to go out back and keep huffing my paint rag. My
Your
copium.
copium. All right. Well, we'll see. I mean, we could speculate all day, but I'm going to keep things moving. Here's the big and maybe controversial news. So, collectors tokens payout for players who completed Series 3 cards are changing. Currently, they're fixed at 400. So when you open one, right? I'm at the spot where you get like 100, right? But you finish Series 3, and then when you open Collector's Cash and it has tokens, they're fixed at 400. So that's changing, and now it's going to be an amount between 200 and 600. Yeah. Wah, wah, wah.
So, again, the internet had a lot to say about this, and this was my favorite interaction that kind of summed up the sentiment. Stop adding more RNG in chests. ... You know it's bad when there's an ellipsis. 200 to 600 tokens? Why not leaving it at 400? Honestly, all right, maybe not maybe kind of written in haste, but I think I kind of summed up my sentiment. Like, why? Why will I do this? And so Ben Brode's response
I can't believe he
is,
responded.
yeah, well, you got to give
Ben
him
responds
credit.
to a lot of stuff.
Yeah, he acknowledged the leaks. He responded to a lot of criticism. He's out there. He's repping it. He's and I don't want to go on too much of a tangent. He does a good job at it. We've seen sometimes people
He
in
does.
design or development positions try and be the front man. No one can be the front man like Ben Brode is. Like he's got the charisma, and you can tell that people are trying to like barb him with these things, and I'm sure behind the scenes he's throwing his arms up and cursing, but like he doesn't reveal his frustration as such on Twitter. But he replied that opening at 400 feels metronomic and boring. So a metronome is that thing you learn when you're learning an instrument that kind of keeps you on time. It's like wearing a brace. It's very rigid.
It's very predictable. Yeah.
The end result is the same, but the journey's more fun.
Oh,
I mean, yeah, it's gonna be fun when
Dopamine.
So they did say that the total number of tokens that you're going to get over time will be the same. There's just gonna be more variance. But my reply to this was define time.
Yeah.
So I am 500 tokens away from Bast. If I roll 2 200s in a row, guess who's not going to be very happy? This guy.
Well, and so yeah, we talked about this a little bit last night, and it really just depends on how it shakes out, right? If I get a 200 and then I get a 600, all right, then I've got 800. Cool. And what's the difference between I get 400 and 400, 800? Like, okay. The scary part is like someone has to actually keep tally of when they start opening these chests and see how often am I opening 200 versus 600 versus whatever else. Because if all of a sudden I start opening 200, 200, 200, 200, 400, like that's a problem. They say it's going to be a net, what is the word? Like,
it's going to be
no change, right?
Yeah, it's going to be functionally the same, basically, is what they were saying.
More fun.
Yeah,
oh my God.
Ridiculous Hat kind of always has the correct sobering take, and I don't remember where he made this. It might have been on Twitter, it might have been in the KM Best Discord, but he said something to the effect of, I'm paraphrasing, this confirms how much they value the RNG, right? The randomness of it, the variance in experience. They want us to have a variable experience, whether that is in our collection, what cards we have, what we're acquiring in our chests, and he says it's fun, and I hope that that's why they do it. Others have argued that it's yet another tactic in a series of layers to kind of keep you coming back to the till for the next dopamine hit, right? So
Yeah.
I'll just put it out there right now. I am not yet past pool 3. I am getting close. I am not happy about this. I would prefer it to be metronomic and boring, because at least I would know what to expect. I can better predict when I'll get the cool new thing. This just makes everything a little bit more muddy, and perhaps maybe I'll feel differently when I get there, but I suspect I won't.
Well, I just want people to track their openings to see how
they will.
Yeah,
I'm sure
that's
some
good.
people will.
Oh, yeah.
It's I detest this. I like really, really hate this. It's funny because people often will paint RNG as a picture of a positive thing or a negative thing, but that's a bit too much of a simplification. Snap's gameplay has a ton of RNG, and it is one of, if not the best game at managing that RNG in a fun way, in my opinion, and it's what keeps the game interesting and evolving. And I think they have absolutely nailed that aspect of the game. And that, to me, like, kind of represents the fun potential of RNG. What does not represent the fun potential of RNG is pretty much everything in the game that is not the gameplay. I mean, that's just how I feel about it. Like, everything not everything maybe, but like the majority of things they claim are fun because of RNG, I find frustrating. Like, the token shop is a great example of this. The token shop RNG is incredibly frustrating because I'm in a position, right, where I've gathered some of the Series 4 cards, and I was looking for I don't remember which one it was, Darkhawk or Valkyrie. I think it was Valkyrie. And I was looking for this card for a while. And so if you don't know how the token shop works, it cycles through the different pools, and pool 5 is a little bit more rare than pool 4 to show up, but it's guaranteed to go through all the cards in a given pool before it shows you ones again. But
I heard it started adding variants too now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's there are a few, but yeah, that's its own
I was thinking about zombies.
thing.
You know what the token shop, the logic behind the token shop reminds me of?
What's that?
It reminds me of the logic as to whether a skin will appear when you open up a mercenaries pack.
Oh god.
Yeah, it's very convoluted logic, right? Like, you would think, right? Like, I'm only missing 2 or 3 cards in pool 4, so you would think, oh, well, I'll see those cards, and then it'll show me some of the pool 5 that I've literally never seen. Like, I finally got Galactus in my token shop. That's the first time I've seen that card since the token shop released, like a month and a half ago or something. That's the first time I've ever seen Galactus. Meanwhile, on the other hand, I've seen Maria Hill about 10 or 15 times.
Just buy her already. If you buy her, then she'll stop showing up.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. And there were some people who it was almost like meme worthy, where I know a buddy of mine on Twitter, he literally had She-Hulk as his only thing in the shop for like a week. Like, he'd see the countdown go, boom, another She-Hulk. Now, obviously, the odds of this are higher if you've collected other cards in that pool. But the fact that this can happen at all is a little ridiculous. And it wouldn't be as ridiculous if the token shop wasn't the primary method of acquiring these cards, especially Series 5. But with the current ridiculous drop rate, it's not realistic to open one of these cards. It just isn't, especially one you want. So the token shop is your primary method. And I know I was seeing the other day or two ago, I know you mentioned the KM Best Discord Blutrane. He was getting kind of frustrated with it because he really wanted to try out Darkhawk with the new card, as you do, especially when you're trying to create content around the game, and it just wouldn't show up for him. There's not really anything he can do to influence that. And that is a huge negative bit of RNG. He was not having very much fun with their RNG system there. And that's how I feel about a lot of the aspects of Snap. outside of the gameplay, I want to make that super clear. I think the gameplay is like a perfect example of the highs and how you can utilize RNG in a fun and interesting way. I think how they utilize RNG in a lot of the other aspects of the game, for me, create a lot more feel bads than like this exciting moment. And I'm someone who's high rolled, right? The odds of getting a pool 5 card randomly
Yeah, Mr.
from a
Pool.
box.
Yeah, Mr. I got 3 pool 5 cards from caches
Yeah,
in the
and so
flesh.
someone did the math on my stream the other day, and they're like, so you did that over like 1800 levels. That roughly comes out to about 1 in 50 when the rate is supposed to be 1 in like 400. So like it's almost a little bit worse than just getting a series 4. So I've gotten really lucky with it. And you would think, oh, well, I high rolled the RNG. I should feel good about this, right? But I really don't. Like it didn't like obviously. Oh yeah, it's exciting when I pull the card and I don't have to spend the tokens. But relative
No
to
sympathy from me.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it feels weird. Like it's such
Cry
a
more.
weird thing. Like I just don't.
No,
And I think part of that is like the knowledge that I know people who have max spent on this game and have not opened or maybe opened one Series 5. And I'm just like, that concerns me greatly.
yeah,
Because there's
no,
no pay timer.
we
It
talked
doesn't
about
exist.
it. We talked about it last time, but you know, it was like when NHL NJ opened up Darkhawk and like when it should have been like a moment of like exuberance and joy that we could share together. Like you got the good card. It was like, oh great, now I have a cool thing I can't use because I don't have. And like in fairness, he was premature on that, and he's just slaying on ladder with the new decks that we'll get to in a second. But that's not the point. The point is that initial reaction. And so, you know, I think that what they need to balance, if we take it on face value that this is all about improving the experience and the variance helps in improving that experience and that, you know, it'll all level out in the end, I think that they need to make the highs feel as good, if not better, than the lows, right? Because if you're trying to not have it be metronomic and you're trying to create variance, you want the joy to outweigh the frustration. And I know that there's a common saying that, you know, we want you to feel something. Feeling frustration is better than feeling nothing. I don't know about that, but I
I
think
disagree with that pretty
Yeah.
hardly. Like,
Can I?
go ahead.
I was just gonna say I just want to contribute one thing to this, and then I'll stop talking about it. The price point of it still kills me. Like I see, people talking in the chat, and will it even out eventually? They say it will. I guess in the patch notes it says that your overall pull rate should stay the same, and it'll even out eventually. So okay, fine, 200, 600, like it all evens out. But at the end of the day, like it's still going to take me a year to get 6,000 tokens. Like I feel like 1,000. I've been saving up 1,000 for a week. I'm finally going to get Dracula. Like I'm at 900 right now, so I'm super close. And it's like, okay, that seems okay. I'm not very good at waiting, but like that seems okay. But 6,000 is so much, and so if now I'm have this like RNG factor of like, well, I might open 200 versus, it's still just so much. Now, I guess at that point in your collection level, like you already have most of the cards, so I guess it makes
Just
sense
change
to
a
have them
bit.
be a little bit more expensive. But like, goodness, that just seems like it's going to
It's
take such a long time.
I'm about
it's
to
a
buy Bast, and maybe
yeah.
Bast is the first card they move down to pool 4, and then you'll be kicking yourself like, I
Mhm.
could have got it at half price, right? So the way that I'm approaching it is that when I buy the card, I am making a commitment to myself that if it does immediately downgrade after, I am not going to throw my phone against the wall. I'm going to accept that this is just part of the experience, and I think that to that end, we have to accept it and hope that the feedback will be acknowledged and maybe will be iterated and improved over time.
So this was actually
Yeah.
acknowledged very recently a little bit. So there was a post question in the community Discord for Marvel Snap. Highly recommend checking it out. By the way, the devs are real active there. People ask questions, all that kind of stuff. And this really touches on kind of exactly what Nate was talking about, where the Pool 3 experience, you see one of those Pool 5 cards pop up in your shop, and you're like, 6,000? it takes me forever to get 1,000. This seems a little ridiculous. And then there's also the frustrating fact of, oh, cool, now I have to wait another 8 hours to see if I get a pool 3 card I actually want instead of something I will have to wait forever to afford. And from what Ben said, and I think this lines up with my experience and other players' experiences, when you are in Pool 3, generally as either free to play or I think pass only, they're relatively similar, you basically earn about 1,000 tokens in a month if you're not like spending gold to increase your collection level faster. And in doing that, you're basically getting one Pool 3 card a month. Now, when you finish that Pool 3, that goes up pretty significantly because of the tokens replacing the Pool 3 cards, but it still evens out to a similar situation where you end up getting around 6,000-ish a month. So you can basically get one of those Pool 5 cards. Now, one thing he mentioned in it is that over time, the system will feel a little bit better because people will be able to get, the one Pool 5 card they really want that month, and there'll be cards rotating down. So the ones that rotate into Series 3, you'll get those pretty quickly if you're Series 3 complete. The thing that felt weird to me, and he kind of acknowledged this, is they basically were like, we understand there's a pain point here in that a lot of the player base isn't really able to get excited about new cards, and I think that's kind of the big issue with this, right? And they basically were like, we're hoping that as people, finish Series 3 and whatnot, this feeling kind of improves, and we're looking at ways to improve this. Now, they didn't say anything concrete about how or anything like that, but I think it's kind of important to bring this up because, maybe with the rotation doing that, maybe it feels a little bit more reasonable, but it goes back to what we talked about in like the last episode of, a card game's bread and butter is getting people excited about new cards, right? Like it's really that simple. If you want your game to generally succeed, you've got to get people excited about the new content you're producing. And this issue right now where players are earning so little tokens in Pool 3 that they feel like they have no way of getting these Pool 5 cards. Like we brought it up last time. Like how many comments do we see? Oh man, that card looks sweet. I look forward to playing it in like a year. And it's just like, it really creates this sense of, it almost feels like gatekeeping. Like I think people feel like they're being kept out of getting to experience new and fun stuff, and then by the time they get to experience it, it's not going to be the new shiny toy, or potentially even worse, it might be nerfed. Like what happens
feel
to
very
yeah, it's so weird.
It feels very backwards to have all the new cards come out, and they're not releasing one at a time. They're releasing like 10, and just knowing that like, cool, I can't play any of those like for months.
So
it's just so backwards.
Yeah. So programmer's note, program note, not programmer's note. Sleep deprivation will do that. In addition to this, they announced the release schedule and the Pool 5 cards that are going to be coming out this month. We're not going to be talking about those tonight. We're going to save that for the next episode, although we are going to be talking about the new card in the Battle Pass, Bast. And funny enough, when we were putting together the show notes, originally I had a section to talk about those cards, and I needed to slash it to try and keep this under 3 hours. And and that was the first thing to go. It wasn't even a question what the first cut was, because like, we're going to talk about Sauron? No.
Yeah.
No, we're not.
No. It's fine. No one's going to get to play with it anyway.
I mean, no one's going to play with it anyways. No, you think anyone's going to drop 6,000 tokens on Sauron? I don't think
I'm not dropping any tokens on any of the new cards. I think they are there's some cards that are cool. I wouldn't mind to open it and toy around. The second you put 6,000 tokens into the equation, I'm not interested in any of the new cards this month outside of the Battle Pass, and that feels weird. Like it's a whole month of new cards, and Series 5 initially had a lot of interesting, exciting stuff. And add this onto the point of, well, now your 1 in 400 chance to get a Series 5 card, there are going to be a few more stinkers in there. There really aren't that many whiffs right now, A lot of the Series 5 cards are rather good. Some may be better than others, but most of them are pretty good and you can do interesting things with. Um, I don't really, and we're not going to talk about all the cards like Blue said, but I don't really feel that way about a lot of these new cards releasing. So I can't imagine how I would feel if instead of pulling Null or Shuri, I pulled Dazzler or Shauna or something. I don't think that would be leaving me with the feeling of, oh yeah, I high rolled a Series 5 card. I'd probably more be feeling like, oh man, I wish I kind of got a card I wanted. Kind of like the Pool 3 problem, right? Like a lot of players experience that in Pool 3. It's just worse because how much more rare the cards are.
But where they are releasing very impactful and meaningful cards are in the Battle Pass, which is more immediately accessible, although admittedly for a fee.
A small premium.
A small premium. Certainly, everyone gets it at the same time, and that was really evident upon Season Reset, which happened this Monday when Zabu was released. Just as a reminder, Zabu is a 3/2 hero. Is that what we call them? A 3/2 card? Because I guess it's only one kind of card. That is an ongoing, and it reads that your 4-cost cards cost 2 less, minimum 1. So another energy cheat engine, which we know from cards like Sarah or locations that discount cards are very powerful. So people were already, including myself, were like, this card's busted. This card's going to be so busted. Now, what's interesting is, I played a lot of Zabu day one in a lot of different shells. I got a lot of different lists from online. I played them, and I came to an inescapable conclusion. Zabu's very good, but it's not broken. But what Zabu does is it's an enabler to do broken things with other cards. And I think what the hot topic was the cards that it enables more than any are 2 Pool 5 cards. One which was kind of the obvious queen, Shuri, but more surprisingly, the real winner of Zabu is Darkhawk. There's another card that kind of was risen from obscurity, although players kind of been keeping an eye on it from its very powerful effect, Absorbing Man, because what Zabu allows you to do is to play Spider-Man and Absorbing Man on the same turn, locking out the opponent, which is very quickly becoming one of my least favorite things to see in-game. I tried other Zabu decks. I played a lot of Zabu Discard. I tried, I came up with this kind of like wonky like Zabu Sarah deck where you kind of play Hell Cow to get Strong Guy, and that deck actually did pretty good, but off the back of Shuri alone. If there was no Shuri in there, it would have been Terabad. So, kind of looking at Zabu, just like how Silver Surfer kind of like consolidated to like the Sarah Surfer and the Negative Surfer, I feel like Zabu's really consolidating around 2 archetypes. Darkhawk, which basically plays things like Rock Slide and Korg to put rocks in your opponent's deck, hyper juicing him, and kind of like a good stuffs Zabu that runs things like Vision, Shuri, things that just take advantage of the buffs. With the Darkhawk, for now, early days still, being the true kind of first real Zabu meta deck that's seeing like refinement and frankly terrorizing ladder. And so Zabu's a good card, and we're gonna look at a couple lists after. You don't need the Pool 5 cards to make it work, but if you've got the Pool 5 cards, you're gonna be reaping the rewards big time. And I'm not saying this, although I've felt it at times. Zabu kind of, for the detractors that say that the Pool 5 cards are too difficult to acquire for the power level they introduce, unfortunately, the current state as it stands right now does give some credence to that argument, although I think that as people stop playing the jank and go back to the good decks, that will probably level out. And I'm very interested to see what happens there. So that's kind of my impression of Zabu. Like it's enabling some disgusting things with Pool 5 cards. and maybe a little bit disappointing in more of a Pool 3 exclusive vein. What do you guys think? Am I kind of overstating the problem here? Or do we think that maybe there is some cautionary tale here about battle pass cards that are supercharging Pool 5 cards?
Hmm.
Agree?
You know,
Disagree?
it's rough. I mean, from my perspective, I will say like I'm basically free to play, like, with the exception of the pass. I'm getting the pass because it's too good of a deal to pass up. But I feel like I played nothing but Zabu decks for the first few days because I wanted to try the new cool thing, and I like Mana Cheat. But because I don't have the pool 5 cards, most of what I'm playing, it just feels like Zabu plus cards. Um, you know, win some, lose some. I mean, I did okay, but it feels like random jank, because the cards that I'm playing don't have a lot of synergy, and so it feels like, yeah. I mean, I can play the new card, but it's not very good without the other ones. That being said, like I played a whole bunch of crossbones. I couldn't even believe it.
I
But
tried him too.
it's, you know, it's funny, but so I ended up playing. I built I jammed Zabu in the same deck as Sarah, and had some shenanigans with leader. I jammed Zabu in with some like Silver Surfer stuff, and it's like it's okay, but it's not doing what it really should do. And so I've gone back to playing like uh, you know, Onslaught, Patriot, like
Hmm.
card buff type thing, just because it's solid and I have all the cards for it. So,
I went
you
back
know,
to playing just plain Jane discard. And just yeah, I think that people are gonna, like you said, go back to their tried and trues when they get tired of getting dunked on, you know?
Yeah, it's that first week of experimentation, right? Like Surfer was absolutely everywhere. People were trying to figure out refinements. Card is obviously strong, and it's kind of similar with Zabu, but Zabu's a bit different because Surfer was kind of your win condition, where Zabu is kind of your enabler. And it's interesting looking at all the pool 4 cards in the game because I was doing, or not pool 4, 4 cost cards in the game. Because I was doing that before it came out. I'm like, there are a lot of good 4 cost cards. But then I went to build a deck with it, and I'm like, there's really only a handful of cards that I think benefit from this in a very significant way. And I tried stuff out across all pools because as someone creating content for the game, I think it's pretty valuable to try and provide insights into different levels of decks because people want something that they can access rather than just hear, yeah, this version's the best. If you don't have these cards, here's what you replace them with. Because oftentimes those replacements, while they can make the deck still work, sometimes, some cards are irreplaceable. Like Shuri, there's not another card in the game that's doing what she does. And so when you're replacing Shuri, all of a sudden, well, now your Wong is worse. So can you still justify the Wong? And it kind of cascades. And I think Zabu has kind of resulted in one of the things people were worried about with new cards being added to Pool 5, in that it's looking like for now, potentially the most juiced version of Zabu is not using one, but is using two Pool 5 cards and a Pool 4 card, being Shuri, Absorbing Man, and Darkhawk. And that's a lot. That's 15,000 tokens. If you're just getting all those and if
sweet
we
dude, I'll play it next year.
yeah, even me who's done with pool 3, that is essentially 2.5 months of token collecting if I'm not like actively spending money to increase my progression. And that's a little insane. I mean, we already saw people were a little unhappy with that with Surfer. We've talked about the negative Surfer and how Bast really improves the consistency of that deck in a pretty significant way. But
Yeah.
now we're starting to see. Now, can Zabu function well without these cards? Yes. Like I played a bunch with Pool 2 Zabu, no Pool 3 cards whatsoever, and it really wasn't that bad. It was more reactive of a deck rather than proactive because a lot of the cards in Pool 2 and 4 that are good are like the tech cards, but you have some other solid ones. White Queen was definitely an MVP. Um, And then I tried some upgrades, making it a pool 3 deck and then a pool 4 deck with the putting in that Spider-Man Absorbing Man combo, but without the other big pieces. But when I put that pool 5 version together, because
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to have these cards, it
High roller.
it was kind of insane how much I felt like the power level of the deck went
Yeah.
up. Like it was a noticeable bump. Like the options for the plays I had felt better. Like the things I could do were honestly kind of degenerate. Like getting you play Wong into Shuri on the same turn, so you get double Shuri. Then you're slamming a 24 power rock slide, putting 4 rocks in their deck, growing your Darkhawk. It's like a well-oiled machine. And even when you don't draw Zabu, and this was kind of the big question mark, right, about the card, right? Like obviously this card is great when you have it on curve or in the early game, but how good is your deck when you don't draw Zabu? And it turns out it's still pretty good. It's not. I think that's kind of what's keeping it a bit balanced. Is that it is worse when you don't get him, but at least some of the versions I've tried, particularly the Pool 5 one, it's a very reasonable deck still a lot of the time when you're not doing the crazy stuff, and it adds a big high roll potential, kind of similarly to negative, in a different way, where, the deck still functions pretty well without negative, but it gets such a boost when you have the Zabu that, like, there it just is, super key and important. And it definitely leaves, I think, a sour taste, especially with the sheer amount of these rare and expensive cards that go into this list. Because, like, before this patch came out, I made a video doing the Ultra Whale deck. We did a negative Thanos deck with 4 5 cards or something ridiculous. And it wasn't good, but it was just something kind of fun to poke fun. Like, hey, what happens if we just throw all the expensive cards in one deck? And hey, they kind of can still win games.
So unfortunately, Binks couldn't be with us tonight, but he did share with us his Zabu deck he wanted to feature, and this is kind of along the lines of the Mr. Suitcase version that you're describing. For those who don't know what that means, that's a very old Magic the Gathering term where when you used to show up to the card shop when we were kids still, there'd be that like 30-year-old guy who literally needed a suitcase
Breaking
to
out the
carry all his
briefcase, yeah.
cards. Yeah. So this deck is running Darkhawk, and you can see Binks has that sick Darkhawk variant that he pulled. Absorbing
jelly.
Man. He's not. I don't know if Binks has Shuri, so this doesn't run Shuri, but he's running the full-on
Yeah, I'm not
Darkhawk
sure.
synergy. Mystique that synergizes really well with Darkhawk. The Odin to trigger additional rocks for Rock Slide or additional Spider-Man webs.
What does Darkhawk do?
So it's
You can tell my collection level from these noob questions, but
so
yeah, sorry. I was gonna say these new
Okay.
cards come out, and I don't even look at what they do because I know I'm not gonna get them for so long.
Yep.
So
But you might
yeah,
play
what is
against
Dark?
them, so
Oh yeah.
You
So yeah, what
probably
does he
won't
do?
though. A lot of it's weird. I don't understand their matchmaking fully, but from the comments I've gathered, it seems like when people don't have pool 5 cards, it's very very rare for them to see one, at least in terms of a player actually having it. You might see it through like random generation sometimes. I don't know what they're doing on their matchmaking back end, but that's kind of the impression I've got, is that for a lot of the players who are in pool 3, they aren't really seeing these cards. Like I'm seeing these cards a lot, but I have a bunch of pool 5 and pool 4 cards, so it makes sense for the matchmaking to put me with people who also have them. But to answer your question, it's basically just a 4/1, has an ongoing. It gets +2 power for every card in your opponent's deck. So putting those rocks in their deck is not only giving them worse draws, it's adding an additional
Oh.
4 power to this Darkhawk, and it gets real big real fast. For a 4-drop, it ends up being very overstated.
just think about it.
Uh,
A Rock Slide that puts 4 rocks into your opponent's deck will make Darkhawk +8. And it's not going to be like 4/9. There's going to be more than the rocks you put in. There are going to be all the other cards as well. And if you copy, some versions are running Moon Girl. So if you copy Darkhawk with Moon Girl, you get 2. This version is playing Mystique. So there's another way of duplicating it. Black Widow is a very cheeky tech that I've been seeing. Time will tell if that's worthwhile, but Black Widow prevents you from drawing, which makes the deck bigger by the end of the game, right? So all these things kind of are meant to it disrupts and powers your win con. Everything else here is just in support of that. I think Doctor Doom, and forgive me, Binks, if I mischaracterize this, the reason why we're running Doctor Doom is because everyone's running double Spider-Man, whether it's via Moon Girl or Moon Girl with Absorbing Man Spider-Man. Doctor Doom is a very good way of circumventing that, allowing you to get additional power into that lane because you're not playing the card. It's like Squirrel Girl, but bigger.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people are running it. And also it shores up a weakness for this deck in that a lot of the other versions of Zabu don't really have access to not just playing for a lockdown Spider-Man lane, but just any location that can kind of, not enable you to play cards there easily. I've experimented with Doom a bunch in some different Zabu shells, and he has honestly really overperformed, especially with Wong. Another really cute and kind of evil interaction with this deck. So this Binks made this deck basically a slightly different version of this deck before Zabu came out. He had a somewhat similar version of this list, a little bit different. But I took that list for a spin when I got Darkhawk, and there's a really sick combo you can do with this where you can curve out going Korg and Black Widow, or even just Black Widow herself is enough. But the idea is if you go Black Widow into Wave, you're giving them, so they get their thing onto the Widow's Bite, they play it usually. But then when you Wave, you use that to cheat out Odin. Odin will reapply the Wave effect, and it'll reapply the Black Widow effect. So it puts a thing to deny them a draw, and they can't play it for free that turn. If they want to draw a card next turn, they have to waste their whole turn playing a 0 power card that takes up the board. So most people aren't going to do that. And that adds more to the Darkhawk power. It denies them getting another draw for the cards that they want. It honestly really surprised me how often it happened and how good it felt when it happened.
Now, this is a deck that probably a lot of people who are listening or watching are not going to be able to play, although if you do have the cards, I would certainly recommend you give it a try. If you don't have Absorbing Man, Moon Girl slots in very nicely there. But you came with a very compelling list that kind of, I say it's budget with a caveat. It doesn't have any Pool 5 cards, and the Pool 4 card it has is easily replaceable, but what we have here is a very interesting Zabu Surfer deck. And time will tell if this has legs, but just by looking at the card choices, it seems pretty solid on the surface.
Yeah, so this is definitely an experimentation. I've played a lot with Zabu. I do think probably the best version of Zabu is either like the one Bink showcased or the one we talked about earlier that kind of just jams in all the ridiculously good stuff in one package. But I was kind of impressed with this deck. I wasn't really sold initially on Zabu Surfer. It seemed like kind of a weird concept to me because you obviously need a bunch of 3s and then you need 4s to get value. But I tried a bunch of different versions of it. This is the one I liked. Rogue might look a little out of place there, but it's literally just anti-Zabu tech. We're just stealing their Zabu.
Rogue stocks are up.
Yeah, Rogue's doing a lot better.
Patriot, Dino,
yeah, it's
these
just
are all
good.
Common cards. Yeah, ongoing is kind of taking a step up, right?
Enchantress stonks too, but obviously Rogue fits a little bit nicer in the Surfer shell. I'm not sure if we have enough early game here or not. It's felt like enough for me. It's kind of hard to cut down on the 3s and 4s, and you can't really cut Sarah. So it's like it's difficult to make more room in the early game, but I think it makes up for it in the swings you enable. I tried a bunch of different 4s in this slot, always Wong, but the Absorbing Man was kind of a flex slot. So if you don't have Absorbing Man, you can still play this deck. Then you only need the 2 season pass cards and some pool 3s.
What would you replace Absorbing Man with?
It kind of comes down to preference. Tech card is not necessarily a bad idea, depending on what you're seeing a lot of, whether that be Shang-Chi or Enchantress. I toyed around with just some good statted 4-drops. I actually put Crossbones in this deck for a little bit, and he wasn't terrible. because a lot of times you'll just be winning a lane by turn 4 or turn 5, and if you can get them down for 2, it's pretty decent. So I really do think you can replace that with whatever your favorite good 4-drop is. You could probably even put in Spider-Man without like doing the whole Spider-Man combo just to help lock down a lane towards the end of the game. It's very flexible. The reason I settled on Absorbing Man is because we have a lot of powerful on reveal effects. And one of the best interactions, I toyed around with this before Zabu, was going Brood into Absorbing Man. Because he copies the Brood, so your Broodlings are 3 power, but there's still 3 cost. Absorbing Man's obviously still 4, but the copies he summons are still the Broodlings, and they're still 3. So like sometimes you can just do a really nice curve of Brood one lane, Absorbing Man into another, and set yourself up for a very value Silver Surfer. So that's one thing I really like about the deck. But it's also very flexible because when you reduce the cost to 2, all of a sudden it becomes a second Silver Surfer on the final turn of the game, or a second Polaris or Wolfsbane. It's just very flexible with, or even Rogue. It really depends what you're facing. But we have a lot of good on reveal effects in this deck, so Absorbing Man Stonks are doing pretty well with this.
All right, so I gotta ask, did you ever get the dream down where you played Zabu on 3, whatever on 4, Sarah on 5, and then Wong, Surfer, and Absorbing Man, which gives you, so Wong won't proc Absorbing Man twice.
Correct.
You get 3 Surfers, which is still obscene. So
it's a lot, yeah.
So
and if you reduce it with Sarah and if you reduce with Sarah and Zabu, the Wong costs 1, the Absorbing Man costs 1, the Surfer costs 2, and you can play another 3-drop.
Like Brood or Wolfsbane or even Maximus. Like
you're a monster.
It's pretty nutty. Honestly, I've been really it overperformed. As someone who had doubts on if this could work in a Surfer shell, I think it can. I'm not saying it's the best version of the deck, but it's definitely one that can snag you some wins and is a lot of fun to play. And you don't need any pool 5 cards from it. I mean, I guess technically Surfer is a pool 5 card now if you didn't get him in the past.
If you're like Nate and you're a Battle Pass exclusive player, this seems a little bit more within the realm of accessibility.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of pool 3s in here, obviously, but at least with those you can target the acquisition a bit. And like I said, Absorbing Man, even though he's great, the deck still functions without him. It doesn't feel like the deck becomes way, way, way worse without Absorbing Man. You don't have quite as many like neat little combos you can do or flexible plays, but it's kind of fine. Like Absorbing Man is not the powerhouse of the deck. The powerhouse is Surfer, and that's why we only have 2 4-drops, because we don't want to dilute our deck with all these cards that don't get a benefit from the Silver Surfer, because that's really how we're trying to win our games.
No, I think this is really cool, and we are just about out of time, but I have to ask, Zombies, I had to go to bed, and you were putting together a very ambitious Zabu deck that caught my eye, which was a Zabu negative Bast Wong Shuri pile. How did that end up doing? Is there hope?
It was awful. It was really bad.
I figured it would be really bad, but I was like, maybe. Although
I tried.
Interestingly enough, on the subject of negative Surfer, apparently that deck is still like aces, right?
It's good. So yeah, it's still good.
So as I was saying before, like I think that people are already screaming, why didn't Zabu get nerfed in the balance patch? It's been less than a week, and I think that what's really exciting about Snap is that every month is like expansion launch day, right? Where everyone's trying out janky stuff, and that's why it's so much fun to play, because the experience is refreshed at a much higher frequency than other card games are. However, you need to approach it with the same mindset that things are going to always initially overperform. The meta is resetting itself every 4 weeks. And I think that, excuse me, as we go into week 2, we're going to see lesser Zabu on ladder as people go back to things that are tried and true. And we're going to see the real snapshot emerge. So I think that, for those that are calling for cards to get nerfed, while it could seem overwhelming, I do think I personally believe it's premature.
And we have buffs and nerfs coming too, right? Like that
Yes.
that is going to make an impact. I'm of the opinion it's going to be a very minimal impact relative to what we have right now, but those cards can change things. Some cards might look like not a lot changes on the surface, but for anyone who wasn't around in the beta, Nakia was one of the most broken cards in the beta by like a wide margin. And she got nerfed really hard. I think nerfed twice, actually. And so the card's been kind of unplayable for quite a while. I can't remember the last time I saw someone put it in a deck. So it's nice to see them kind of try and juice a card like that back up because, I want as many of my cards to be playable as possible in the collection. And I think that's kind of why they take these lighter approaches, so more they aren't trying to delete cards unless they really, really have a good reason. Um, so I think it's neat, and we'll see. Who knows? Maybe she finds a home in a surfer shell. We will see. But it's nice to have a reason to experiment with her again after she's been kind of out of it for like half a year.
So just before we wrap, I do want to just share some news that Binks just kind of messaged us to give us an update on his situation, and things are looking okay. So while we missed him tonight on the show, for now things seem to be looking at least to be improving. So hopefully that continues to be the case, and we'll definitely need to get Binks on in the future. So want to thank Nate for taking the time to produce the amazing visuals that give a semblance of authority and quality here. They look amazing in Zombies.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Really want to thank you for once again joining us and lending your expertise to this game.
Yeah, it's always fun.
Obviously investing a lot of time in, and it really shows in terms of your breadth of knowledge and ability to speak to things. I believe in a very even-keeled and balanced way. Of course, I'm biased. So
I'll take the compliment anyway.
Yeah. So before we wrap, Zombies, if you want to share your socials, YouTube, etc., with the listeners and viewers.
Yeah. So I do mostly daily content over on the YouTube, ZombiesGoNomNom, like it is here on the screen. I also do Twitch stuff. Very slight change to the name there. It's a Z at the end of Zombies because I guess the S was taken. Eventually we'll hit that big status where they let me change my name to the proper thing. But for now, that's what I've been doing. I just streamed like every day for a month last month. That was a lot of fun. I'm still doing it pretty regularly. And I really enjoy just kind of hanging out, talking to people about the game, that kind of stuff. And I'm excited to try and make some Snap content in the near future that hopefully is a bit different than what a lot of people are doing right now.
Well, I certainly look forward to that. And Nate, I hear that you run another successful podcast, not just a meme like this one. So where can people find that and you?
Successful is a relevant term, but I appreciate
Hey, when you get invited to participate in the Blizzard pre-release creators theory crafting stream, that is a high bar to follow. So your modesty is always appreciated, but in this case, not necessary.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, so you can find me. I'm the host of Born to Be Wild, a Wild exclusive Hearthstone podcast. We record live on Friday nights talking about Wild Hearthstone. And so we'll be back at it tomorrow night with my good friends Hydralisk, usually joined by Electric Sheep City, who's going to be out for a little while since he just had a brand new baby. Yeah, it's very exciting all around, but glad to be hanging out here with y'all. And if you're interested in following me, kind of like Zombies, my name's up on the screen. It's NateWolfeTCG, NateWolfeTCG on Twitter. Mostly post Hearthstone stuff, some Marvel Snap stuff as well, and really enjoying the game. All of our stuff is on Born to Be Wild on all the different platforms. Born to Be Wild HS on all the different platforms. But yeah, thank you so much. I had an absolute blast, and really enjoying this. It's like, what do we do? The show's over. I still want to hang out and talk more.
Oh,
But
I'm
no
sure
more
we
3 hour
can.
shows. We promised no more 3 hour shows. So
Yeah.
We did better this time.
This was
So
good,
we're
yeah.
at the hour and 25 mark, so we're about 10 minutes more than I wanted to be, but I think that we're still getting our footing here, and it's going to be a little bit of a progressive elaboration as we refine. But
well, we
I
did, and
appreciate the restraint that we all tried to exercise. As
well,
for
and Blue, I wanted to say thank you to you also. I mean, this was really your baby, I think, and a really um, fun and exciting idea, and I'm always enjoy podcasting with you. So I'm glad that you had the idea. I know it started out as a little bit of a meme and the idea as a one-time thing that has morphed into something a little bit different, but I think we're all the better for it. So thank you, and yeah, where can people
Yeah,
find
super
you?
agree.
Mostly Twitter. So at Blutrane, spelled the same way as on screen. For those listening, that's Blutrane. I also am in the Born to Be Wild Discord, which is a wonderful Discord that hosts, acts as a community hub for the show. So I could be found there as well if you're not into Twitter. Some people aren't anymore because of the crazy that's happening there. Yeah, in terms of when we're going to do this next, I don't know. Maybe we'll do
When
a
we feel
recap.
like it.
Yeah, when we feel like it. Perhaps when we get more
To be
news
continued.
about the, leader, what the rework will be. Maybe when the next Battle Pass card gets announced. Maybe if we want to do a little bit of a post-mortem on Zabu, see kind of how our takes held up over the month. So perhaps maybe towards the end of the month. We'll see, but we'll do our best to give a little bit more notice next time than we did this time. This was kind of a last minute thing, so we'll see what happens. But we'll catch you when we catch you next time. Thank you everyone for those who hung out in Twitch, those who are listening on a podcast app or watching this on YouTube. Have a wonderful night, day, morning, wherever you are.
Wiser words were never spoken. And you heard that on Born to Be Cosmo.
Yeah, so just P.S. That's the logo changed, but we're sticking with the name, as terrible as it is. We're
I love it.
doubling down on it. Our best pup. All right.